Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about All of Us Are Dead, episode 7. So full spoilers for the episode, and apologies, it's been a little while since the last one. It's been a very, very busy week, but I'm glad to get back to the show. And while I do think this episode started off a little bit in the slow side, there was a little bit of dilly-dallying at the start with, there was a little bit of touching, feeling romantic stuff between Suhook and Prez, with some really weird little moments, actually. The actual conversation was fine, but there was like some odd little moments of slow motion, which weren't filmed in slow motion. They were just regular film slowed down by the looks of it, so it looked quite stuttery. But that aside, it started off a little bit slow, but it crescendoed amazingly. This picked up so much in the last half of this episode. It built up them having a new plan to get to the roof, like their execution of that plan led to a lot of really fun moments, with the wall, the barricade of the chairs and the tables, and them playing music in one side of the room to try and attract all the zombies so they can then sneak out the other door and hopefully make it to the roof. So that looked pretty cool and impressive. It felt like such a tenuous barrier between them and certain death, like having this horde of zombies, and obviously the working together and all that side of things, all really fun. Of course, there's some important details dropped between characters here. Suhook tells Cheung San that the bully is dead. He thinks the bully's dead, of course. He's not really dead. He survived that fall out the window, but you understand why he thinks he's dead. He's not considered the idea that he will survive that. So yeah, important stuff there. And of course, Cheung San tells him about the principal and him murdering the principal and all that. So important details shared. But then they do run up to the roof, and this is obviously they're heartbroken that the door is locked, and this is where the prick on the roof decides not to open the door because he's scared. And at first he sees banging, right? But eventually some of them do start yelling, "Is anyone out there? Is there anyone out there?" And at that point, he should be opening the door. And they've given him a little bit of motivation to show that he is kind of spiteful to everyone else in the school. Combine that with the fear that this could lead to zombies getting onto the roof and like threatening his safety. There's enough motivation to understand why he's making this choice. It's just a horrible choice, and you don't want him to make it. And I think I joked back when they teased the helicopter back in like episodes 3 or 4. I think I joked about how the helicopter's probably going to crash or go down. This is kind of the moment, seemingly, that I was predicting. Not that the helicopter has crashed or it's going to go down. It may happen in the start of next episode. It may be a karma thing where it looks like this kid on the roof is going to escape with the helicopter, but then something bad will happen to it, and it's kind of like an instant like, no, you made the wrong choice, so thematically in the story you have to like be punished for it with death. That may happen, it might not, but even if it doesn't, when I say that's this moment, what I really mean is the idea that they are so close to being rescued before the end, right? Not right at the end when they're actually maybe going to get out, but there's at some point, and we're kind of, episode 7, we're just past the halfway point, somewhere in the middle where it looks like they're about to get out, and I was thinking a helicopter would crash or something, but in this case, no, it's out there, and because this kid is lying to the soldiers and saying, no, there's no one else, it's just me, seemingly, they are so close, they're on the other side of the door, and they can't hear the helicopter necessarily, they can't hear that there's other people out there now because of the sound of all the zombies, because at this point there's a horde of zombies coming up the stairs, so it's believable that they can't hear the conversation between the kid on the roof and the soldiers, because it's not like they're yelling at each other. They're kind of they're a little bit away from the door now. They're not shouting through the door to try and attract attention. The subtitles did conveniently tell me at one point that one of the signs on the door was that the door would open automatically in the event of a fire, so I suspect that's how they're going to get through onto the roof at the start of next episode. But when I mentioned the crescendo, it wasn't even just this was all very exhilarating, this was all very exciting. But the crescendo, of course, is the bully himself is making his way up. If anything, if I have a nitpick about the bully's journey to the main characters, is that it does feel like he takes a long time to get there, given that we see him start making his way up quite early, and he's nowhere near the rest of the horde when they're actually coming into the room. He doesn't get to them until they're, you know, outside the roof entrance. But his like build up where he like is walking up the stairs, he's under the tarp that they've thrown down to try and hold the zombies back, and he's holding up a zombie by the neck as kind of a shield in front of him. Like, this show has done really good job with its cliffhangers. I will say that. Like, the cliffhangers by and large have been pretty solid too, and some of them have been maybe a little gimmicky, but this was a really solid one, I thought, and it left me excited for the next episode. So I have no complaints about that element of it. But really exhilarating episode. It really felt like they're desperate now. They're trying to like just they're desperate to try and have some hope of escape now. And you know, it felt in the first half that they were sitting around a lot, and they've been kind of doing that since episode 3 in a lot of ways, with little, you know, interruptions when they moved from one location to the other. But it kind of felt like they're sick of that now, and they want to just try and have a chance of escaping. And one of the things that I've glossed over, of course, just to sort of skip to the action, which was entertaining and all the usual stuff, and this show was very good at the action, is that Prez like is sort of getting extra hearing senses at the very least. Like, she's hearing things around the school, and she hears the other kids in the class breathing. She can, you know, she hears one of them fart as kind of a sort of like little joke, and then it mixed in with the rest of the actual sort of tension. And there's a really great moment where she hears something coming from the storage room, and you're thinking, oh, is this like how they're going to find her in there? Is she going to hear that there's someone there? Maybe she'll just think it's a zombie or whatever, but all it is a foot tapping for a second, and she hears it, and you're like, oh. So I actually surprised me that they left this room without ever finding out that she's in there, or that there was, you know, supplies, there was food and beverages and stuff in there. So I'm excited to see how this plays into it. But, you know, I've said since they introduced this idea that maybe them having someone like this on their team would be an advantage, like a tool that could be used. And even in this episode, it's not really that useful. I mean, ultimately all she does is say they're coming, and then they're there, like, you know, 30 seconds later. It's not that much of a useful tidbit. They kind of expected them to be coming anyway. But I suspect it will, you know, they're going to find things or be aware of danger because of her at certain points, and that's going to be valuable for sure. So yeah, that's good stuff. The bullied girl, whose name I finally got to see this episode, let me just confirm, yeah, Yoonji, because she finds a teacher and ends up eating them, which seems to confirm actually that just because the person who is infected is immune or has this more kind of like human version of the virus, like Prez does, like the bully does, it doesn't seem to mean that whoever they infect will also have that version. It seems like, because this teacher seems to just turn into a regular zombie, so it actually is maybe just completely lucky that Prez, despite being bit by the bully, is just someone who is naturally either in some level immune or has mutated the virus to a slightly different version of it. So, and I was actually worried, because I thought that there was a moment with the bully where he runs into his fellow bully right under the car, where I thought that he was kind of starting to lose his mind a little bit, where he was kind of confused, and I thought, oh, is he slowly turning? Is it like his intelligence starting to slowly fade away, and that's going to be something we're going to have to deal with? But he seemed fine for the rest of the episode, so I don't know if that was just him reacting weird to seeing someone who he used to be submissive to. You know, this other guy was the head bully. And of course here he, like, you know, violently breaks his hand and lets the zombies eat him, and it's this kind of power play. And then he's like immediately focused again on Chung-san, and that's like we're focusing the episode from that point on for him. So but yeah, the bully girl, Eunji, I'm going to try and remember that, but she eats some fish that are alive, and then eats this teacher who has been a bit of a prick, admittedly, but that does go all out on his stomach, and then vomits though. So, and she seems to just be walking out of the school towards the end. I wonder if the helicopter and all the commotion at the end maybe have her change her mind. There's a lot of other things in this episode, a lot of subplots and the other things that are going on around the school, or not around the school, sorry, around the city. I mean, the episode opens with a soldier who is going in with teams to rescue people, which it was a nice little vignette on its own because it did a couple things. One, it gives you a nice little story for a random character, so a little slice of life moment for one of these soldiers. Two, it shows us an example of some civilians being rescued, so we know it can happen and that the students have a chance, in theory, at some point of being rescued and being okay because of this. It sounds like the quarantine zone is being held up and that nothing's gotten outside the quarantine zone, so it doesn't sound like the whole country's doomed as of yet. So that's interesting. But also, like, it leads into, like, they're going to be experimenting on some zombies to try and figure out a cure. And we see him later on. Like, they don't kill this zombie when this kid turns at the start of the episode, who you care a little bit about because we hear him talking to his mother, and he's just 2 days from retirement. Not quite. He's a week from going home. Not the exact same thing, but it's basically the same thing as 2 days from retirement. They don't kill him. They put him in a bag, and he's taken to like a lab, and so that I'm sure that's going to be important going forward. But it gives a nice little bit of humanity to it, which is nice. So you got that going on. You got Unjo's father, who is alive, who finds a way to a shotgun, having some ammo. So he's on his way to the school. Likewise, the helicopter that's at the school at the end is because the politician lady, she actually begs for them to send a chopper to the school because there's probably still students, and they kind of acknowledge that this general, whoever it is, he acknowledges that, and he asks like the other guys, how many students have we saved? Because that's all out. The outbreak happened in the middle of the day, so everyone was at school and work. So how many students have we saved? And the answer was none. So all the children might be dead. All the children in the town could be dead. So maybe we should have prioritized the schools a bit more. And it sets up that he has some empathy, that he cares about people a little bit. Because when he's talking about the soldier who's now a zombie that they're going to experiment on and do autopsy on and so on, he says call his parents and like make sure we have permission for everything we're going to do. And the other guy's like, well, we don't have to. We're under martial law. We don't need permission. And he says, call them anyway. I don't care. Like, these parents gave their son to us. We make this okay with them. So it shows you, he doesn't have to do this, but he's going to do it anyway. It gives you a little bit of humanity from him. So right away, he's a character who seems like he's got a bit of heart, and because of that, it's easy to kind of get into some of his decisions. And later on, we find out, yeah, he's going to send a chopper to the school because he agrees that's important. But we also hear very quickly that his mother's in a different location inside the town, and he's not giving her priority treatment. He's not saying, oh, we're going to go hunt for her specifically. We're going to, when that zone is is a rescue zone, he calls it, then we'll go in and maybe she'll be there. And it's just kind of like better moment. And it's an interesting comparison to Unjo's father, who we are completely behind pretty much because he is kind of likable. He's doing the right things. He saved the people he was supposed to save, and now he's going after his daughter. Whereas this guy's like, no, I'm not going to give my priority to my mother. And maybe it's just a comparison of one as a daughter who's still, not even an adult yet, right? Still a child, and the other one's an older woman, presumably, because this guy's already like high ranking in the military and middle age, so presumably his mother is elderly or close to elderly. So interesting sort of comparison there to sort of like say maybe the youth should be more important, and like that's kind of like where they should be focusing their attention on. There's interesting things. And then we have the cop who's with the other cop and the baby and the little girl. This scene actually made me laugh quite a bit. I did get a little kick out of this, where our main detective's trying to make the girl feel better, and he's like, oh, I've got a son about your age, and he's very handsome. He's just trying to make her, so he's just trying to distract her and be cute, and he's like, I'll introduce you to him when we get out of this. And the girl just deadpan says she already has a boyfriend, which I thought was really funny. It's just the girl's being like more calm than the other cop who's a little chicken shit. And when they get away, there's a fun little scene with them on the little scooter, but they run into the guy, the social media guy, the guy who was live streaming, who's up on a roof with a hurt leg. And of course, a detective just can't leave him behind, even though there's clearly no more room on this little scooter, right? There's 2 adults and a baby and a child on it already. Like, this is way more than it's supposed to handle. And he gets off to go and help this guy, and then the other guy, the chicken shit, he just speeds off. and leaves him dangling there. So yeah, a lot of little things sprinkled throughout. The Archer group as well, they try to make a little stretcher for the injured guy, and they try to leave, but immediately it's too difficult and they have to retreat and come back inside. And it's like, okay, there's that. And there's a little bit of tension between him and his friend, who she's showing genuine concern and doesn't want to leave him behind, and he's so taken aback because she's usually so moany and moody, from what we've seen in the show anyway, that he kind of calls her out and says, no, you're usually such a bitch, why don't you just leave? And she clearly is upset by this. Her tone changes and she tells him to shut up. But so it's giving them a little bit of character as well. The fact that they're trying to find a way to take him with them and not leave him behind is nice, and it does make us root for their group a little bit more. You're kind of hoping eventually they are going to team up with the main group, and it seems like we might build to that at some point, and give them another tool in their arsenal, because they have Prez, who has a few extra senses. But they don't have a lot of advantages going for them right now, so maybe a couple of archers would be a wise choice. It wouldn't surprise me though if because we'll probably get the reunion between the brother and sister, because her brother is in the main group. But it wouldn't surprise me if at least one of this archer group die before they get there. Whether that's the big guy who's injured, whether that's the second archer. Just because he feels like the one who's the most likely to die first out of that group. Just as I'm getting a feeling from him. That's just kind of what I'm sensing. But yeah, there's a lot of sprinkle things going on, and I think that's partly why the first half of the episode did feel like it was maybe a little slower to start with. At least it felt like that to me, because it was sort of bouncing around all these different things. And there wasn't so much momentum early on, but once they had the plan to make the barricade inside the class to get to the roof, from that point on everything started to crescendo really well, mainly because the helicopter thing tied in, of course, to their plot, so that felt like it was sort of building with it, and a couple of other things as well. So it really did feel like the adrenaline started to get pumping as the episode went on, and I enjoyed a lot of the action towards the end of this. And obviously the relationships are still there, and they're mostly still very endearing. There's a little moment where Se-hyuk, tells Chung San, hey, I like this other girl, be nice to Onjo, don't be an idiot, don't treat her like just one of the idiot guys that you usually do, so those things are endearing. Those things are what make you root for the characters a little bit more, and there's a lot of frustrating character decisions in this episode as well. And by the guy in the roof mainly, but there's a bunch of that going on too. So, I appreciate that even with these characters in this episode that are brand new, whether it's the guy at the start who dies before the opening title scene, or whether it's this general character who we might have seen briefly before, but this is certainly the first time I remember him really. I think maybe he was there in the press conference when they were announcing martial law, but this is the first time we've really gotten to know him as a character, certainly. That very quickly they gave me characters that I could feel something for. So, you cared a little bit when the guy at the start died, and that fed into you caring about this general because, his reaction and his treatment of this guy, even in death, was commendable. And it's like, okay, he's not just a prick. There's something to root for here, and that's neat. But then there's other characters in this show that they do a good job of making you hate. So, if nothing else, its handling of characters who you want to root and hate for is very good, and it's still very strong even past the halfway point now. So I'll be back with episode 8 as quickly as I can, although weekends are very busy, but I'll see what I can do. So let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates, and if you want to support the show and all the content, you can over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. But otherwise, that is me, so thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?